Kesistak Station hung in the dark like a metal flower, its petals slowly turning around a dying red star. The station was old. Older than most of the species who traded there. It had seen wars begin and end, and it had seen peace treaties signed in rooms that smelled of fear. Today, it would see something none of its old walls had seen before. Ambassador Mira Castellanos walked down the long hallway toward the trade chamber. She was a small woman with dark hair tied back and brown eyes that had once studied gorillas in the green hills of Rwanda. Now she studied aliens. She thought the work was not so different. You watched. You learned. You did not pretend to know more than you did. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Behind her walked two human guards, tall and quiet. Their weapons clipped to their belts but not in their hands. Beside her walked her translator, a thin man named Doyle who sweated when he was nervous. He was sweating now. "You know the Vithrak do not like to be kept waiting," Doyle said. "I know," Mira said. "And you know they are angry about the trade route." "I know. And you know Warlord Jarvek has killed 7 ambassadors in his life." Mira smiled a small smile. "You told me that already this morning. I am telling you again." They reached the door of the trade chamber. It was a tall door, made of dark stone, carved with the old symbols of the 12 founding species of the Concordance. Mira stopped and took a slow breath. She had read everything she could about the Vithrak. She knew about their teeth. She knew about their claws. She knew that their whole culture was built on who was stronger and who was weaker, and that they showed this with their bodies in ways that other species found frightening. She also knew that they were just people. Frightened people, maybe. Angry people, often. But people. The door slid open. The chamber was large and round. A long stone table sat in the middle. On one side sat the Vithrak delegation. 6 of them. They looked like large cats that had learned to stand up, with golden fur and black stripes and eyes the color of old copper. Their leader, Warlord Emissary Jarvek the Unbroken, sat at the center. He was the biggest of them. His fur was going gray at the edges, and a long scar ran from his left ear down to his jaw. When Mira walked in, he watched her the way a mountain watches a small bird fly past. On the other side sat representatives from 3 other species. There were the Volnai, tall and thin and blue, who spoke in whispers. There were the Threshik, small and round and many-eyed, who never stopped moving. And there was a single Melor, a being of stone and light who spoke only when it had something important to say. Mira sat down at the empty human chair. Doyle sat beside her. Her guards stood behind. "Ambassador Castellanos," Jarvek said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones rolling down a hill. "You come late. I come on time," Mira said gently. "Your clocks and mine are set differently. I am sorry for the confusion." The warlord showed his teeth. It was not quite a smile. "You speak softly. I speak clearly. That is different." One of the younger Vithrak, sitting 3 seats down from Jarvek, made a low sound in his throat. His name was Kreth. He was young, maybe the Vithrak version of 20 years old, and his fur was a brighter gold than the others. His tail moved behind him in sharp, angry flicks. He had been passed over for a promotion 2 days before. He needed to prove himself. He needed to be seen. The talks began. They talked about the trade route that ran through a small group of stars near the edge of Vithrak space. The humans wanted to use the route to send ships to a mining world. The Vithrak said the route passed too close to their territory. Jarvek spoke slowly and carefully. Mira answered slowly and carefully. They were not friends, but they were being honest with each other, and in diplomacy, that was sometimes enough. An hour passed. Then 2. They were close to an agreement. Mira could feel it. She leaned forward and said, "If we place a small marker station here, at this point, your ships can see our ships long before they enter your space. No surprises. No fear." Jarvek nodded slowly. "This is acceptable." It was then that Kreth moved. He moved fast, faster than Mira had ever seen anything move. One moment he was sitting in his chair, and the next moment he had jumped across the long stone table. His claws scraped the stone. His mouth was open. His teeth were out. He landed in front of Mira, and before her guards could even reach for their weapons, he sank his teeth into her left shoulder. The pain was sharp and hot. Mira gasped. She heard Doyle shout something. She heard her guards shouting. She felt blood, warm and wet, running down her arm. But she did not reach for her own weapon. She did not call for help. She did not pull away, because she had seen the young warrior's eyes in the moment before he bit her, and she had seen what was in them. It was not hate. It was not anger. It was fear. The wide, panicked fear of a young creature who did not know what else to do. Mira had seen that fear before. She had seen it in a young chimpanzee once, in the hills, after it had been separated from its mother. She had seen it in her nephew when he was 4 years old and lost in a crowded market. She had seen it in 1,000 small living things that did not have the words to say they were scared. The chamber had gone silent. The Vithrak delegation had frozen. Their eyes were wide. Their fur was standing up. They knew what came next. Everyone in the room knew what came next. The humans would draw weapons. The Vithrak would defend their warrior. There would be blood on the stone floor. There would be war. But Mira did not draw a weapon. She lifted her arms, slowly, her shoulder burning, her blood running down, and she wrapped them around the young Vithrak warrior, who was still biting her. She held him. The chamber stopped breathing. Jarvek's copper eyes went huge. Doyle made a small, lost sound. One of the Vithrak elders let out a noise that was almost a scream, and Kreth, with his teeth in her shoulder and his eyes full of fear, felt something he had never felt in his whole life, and did not understand it, and did not know what to do. Mira did not know what she had just done. She only knew that a frightened creature needed to be held. She held him. For 4 long seconds, the chamber was a still picture. Mira held the young Vithrak warrior. His teeth were still in her shoulder. Her blood was still running down her arm. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was slow and steady, the way she had taught herself to breathe when she was afraid and did not want the fear to show. Kreth did not move. He could not move. Something was happening inside him that no Vithrak had felt in 2 million years. His body was locked. His heart was beating so fast, he could not count the beats. His mind was screaming at him to run, to fight, to bite harder, to do anything. But he could not do any of these things because the signals his brain was sending to his legs were not arriving. They were being lost somewhere between his mind and his body. Because a predator was holding him. The full body hold. The ancient grip. The one his people called the prey hold. And did not speak of. And did not do. Long ago, before the Vithrak had language or fire or cities, they had been small creatures on a green world. And there had been bigger creatures who had hunted them. And when a bigger creature caught a smaller one, it had done this. It had wrapped its arms around the small one and held it close to its chest, and then it had eaten it. This memory was not in the Vithrak mind. It was in the Vithrak body. It was older than thought. Every cell in Kreth's body knew that being held like this meant death was coming. But death was not coming. The soft creature who held him was not biting, was not clawing, was not crushing. She was only holding. Her arms were gentle. Her breathing was slow. She was making a soft sound against his ear, a sound his translator did not translate, a sound that was not a word at all. It was a hum, a low, warm hum, the kind human mothers had made to human babies for hundreds of thousands of years. And Kreth's body, which was ready to die, did not die. Instead, something broke inside him. Not something physical, something older. A wall that his species had built 2 million years ago, brick by brick, generation by generation. A wall, made of fear. Mira's guards pulled her back gently. Doyle was there, pressing cloth to her shoulder, his hands shaking. The Vithrak guards stepped forward, but Jarvek raised one huge paw and stopped them. His copper eyes were fixed on Kreth. Kreth stood where he was. His teeth were red. His jaw was open. He looked at his own claws as if he had never seen them before. Then he sat down, right there on the stone floor, and he began to make a sound the Vithrak language had no word for. He was crying, not from pain. He had been hurt worse than this many times. Vithrak cubs bit each other hard enough to bleed for fun. This was nothing. He was crying because a predator had held him, and he had not died. And in the place where the fear had lived, his whole life, there was suddenly a hole. A quiet, warm, empty hole. And he did not know what to put in it. Zarvek rose slowly from his chair. He walked around the long stone table. His steps were careful. His tail hung low behind him. He stopped in front of Mira, who was pressing cloth against her own shoulder and trying not to shake. "Human," he said. His voice was not loud. "Why did you do that?" Mira looked up at him. Her face was pale. "He was afraid," she said. "He attacked you." "Yes." "He drew your blood." "Yes." "You could have killed him. Your guards would have been within their right. The concordance would have called it justice." "I know." Jarvek stared at her for a long time. His copper eyes were unreadable. "You did not kill him," he said. "No." "Why?" Mira thought about the question. She thought about it carefully, because she knew that whatever she said now would be remembered for a long time. "Because killing a frightened child," she said slowly, "does not solve anything. It only makes more frightened children." Jarvek was silent. Then he turned to his delegation and spoke in his own language, fast and low. The guards around Kreth stepped back. 2 medical officers came forward and lifted the young warrior gently to his feet. He was still crying. He did not resist. Then Jarvek turned back to Mira. "You will need medical care." "Yes. Our physicians are closer than yours." "I know. Will you allow a Vithrak doctor to treat you?" Mira managed a small smile. "I would be honored." The warlord nodded once. Then he did something strange. He bowed. Not deeply. Not in the formal way. Just a small lowering of his great striped head. And he said, in the Vithrak tongue that Doyle translated with shaking hands, "A debt has been made today that my people do not yet know how to measure. We will try to learn." He walked away. His delegation followed. Kreth, being led out by the physicians, turned his head once and looked back at Mira. His copper eyes were huge and wet. His mouth was still open a little, as if he wanted to say something but had no words for it. Mira raised her good hand to him in a small wave. He was taken away. Later, in the station's medical bay, a Vithrak doctor cleaned Mira's shoulder with careful paws. The wound was deep, but clean. Vithrak teeth were sharp. They cut, rather than tore. The doctor worked in silence for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, "The young one will not speak to anyone. He will be all right?" Mira asked. "His body will be all right. And the rest of him?" The doctor's paused. "We do not know. No one has ever been held before. We do not know what happens after." Mira closed her eyes. Her shoulder hurt. Her head hurt. Her heart hurt, in a way she could not explain. "Doctor," she said. "Yes?" "When he is ready to speak. If he is ever ready. Please tell him that I am not angry." The doctor did not answer for a long moment. Then she said, "He asks for you." Mira opened her eyes. "What?" "The young warrior. He will not speak to us. But he says one word. Over and over. He says it in the old grammar. The grammar we use for mothers who have found cubs that were lost." "What word?" The doctor's voice was careful. He says, "Please." News of what had happened at Kesistok Station was already moving outward through the dark, faster than any ship, carried on whispered channels between traders and diplomats. The galaxy was about to find out what a human did when a predator bit her, and the galaxy was not ready. The news traveled the way bad news always travels. Fast, in pieces. Wrong in many of the pieces, but not wrong in the part that mattered. By the time Mira Castellanos had flown back to Earth for her debriefing, the story was already being told in 20 languages across 50 worlds. The details changed in each telling. Some said the human had bitten the warrior back. Some said she had killed him. Some said she had done magic and turned him into a peaceful creature forever. None of the stories said what had really happened, because no one knew how to say it. On Earth, in a long gray room under a long gray sky, Mira sat at a small table and faced 15 generals and diplomats. Her shoulder was healing. She wore a blue jacket that hid the bandage. She was very tired. "Ambassador," said a general with white hair, "you must understand the position we are in." "I think I do." "You hugged a Vithrak warrior." "Yes." "After he bit you." "Yes." "The Vithrak do not hug. Their whole culture says so. Their whole biology says so. You did something that, by their own rules, should have killed him." "Yes." "And it did not kill him." "No." And now half the Vithrak Empire wants to try it, and the other half wants to go to war with us for suggesting it. I did not suggest it. I did it. The general put his face in his hands. That is not better, Ambassador. Mira folded her hands on the table. What do you want me to say? A younger woman, a diplomat from the East, leaned forward. We want you to say that you will not do it again. I cannot promise that. Why not? Mira looked at her for a long moment. Because if a frightened person comes to me and needs to be held, I will hold them. I was a biologist before I was a diplomat. I watched a mother gorilla once who had lost her baby. She sat alone for 3 days. On the 4th day, another female came and sat beside her and put an arm around her and stayed. It was not a rule. It was not a plan. It was what gorillas do, what humans do, what almost every warm-blooded creature on Earth does when they see another one hurting. She paused. The room was quiet. The Vithrak do not do this, she said. They were never able to. But one of them asked to be held, and I held him. I will not say I am sorry. I am not. And I will not promise to stop, because I do not know how to stop being what I am. The general looked up from his hands. He was an old soldier. He had fought in 3 wars. His eyes were not unkind. Ambassador, he said, you may have just started the strangest war in history. Or ended one, Mira said softly. Far away, on a warship in Vithrak space, Warlord Jarvik sat alone in his quarters and stared at a glowing message screen. He had been writing the same message for 3 hours. He had deleted it twice. His quarters were bare. Vithrak warriors did not keep soft things. The bed was hard. The walls were dark. There were no pictures. His people did not keep pictures. To look often at a face you loved was a weakness. Love itself was a weakness, though no Vithrak would say so out loud. Jarvik was 52 years old. By his people's measure, he was old. He had killed many enemies. He had led many battles. He had 3 mates, as was his right, and he had 14 cubs, most of whom he had never held, because holding was not done. He typed slowly. His claws were not made for small keys. Ambassador Castellanos, he wrote. I have a question. He stared at the screen. Then he kept writing. My people do not sleep well. We never have. From the day we are born, we sleep with one eye open and our claws close by. This is not a choice. It is how we are made. Our children scream in the dark. Our warriors drink strong drink at night so they can rest. Our elders die tired because they have never truly rested in all their long lives. My youngest cub is 8 years old. She has never slept through a full night. She is a good cub. She is not broken. All Vithrak cubs are like this. All Vithrak adults were like this once. This is simply what we are. Kreth is sleeping now. The physicians tell me he sleeps deeply. He sleeps like a cub in a safe place. He has not slept like this since he was too young to remember. I do not know what you did to him. I do not think you know either. But I am writing to ask a question that my people have never asked anyone, because we did not know there was anyone to ask. Can this thing be taught? Can it be taught to a grown warrior who has been afraid every night of his 52 years? I do not want the answer to be yes. If the answer is yes, then everything my people have been, for all of our history, has been a long walk in the dark, when a door was standing open all along. I am not sure I can bear that answer, but I am asking. Zarvik. He read it 3 times. Then he sent it, before he could delete it again. On Kestak Station, Kreth was released from the medical bay after 6 days. He walked out into the main corridor, where other Vithrak warriors were waiting to see what kind of creature he was now. He looked the same. His fur was the same golden color. His teeth were the same sharpness. His claws were the same length. But the older warriors, the ones who had known him for years, could see that something in him was different. He walked more slowly. His shoulders were not tight. His tail was still. His eyes, which had always been quick and nervous, were calm. One of the older warriors, a female named Vashka, stepped in front of him. She was twice his age and had been his teacher when he was a cub. Young one, she said. Are you well? I am well. You slept? I slept. She studied him for a long time. Then she said, in a very low voice, so that no one else could hear, Tell me what it was like. Kreth looked at her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I was not afraid. Vashka's ears moved back. For how long? For 4 seconds. She closed her eyes. 4 seconds of not being afraid. In a Vithric life of constant, quiet fear, 4 seconds was a gift beyond measure. She had never had such a gift. No one she knew had ever had such a gift. Young one, she whispered. Would you teach me? Kreth did not know what to say. He was a young warrior. He had no rank to teach an elder. But he looked at Vashka's tired old face, and he saw in it the same thing he had felt himself 6 days ago on the cold stone floor of the trade chamber. I will try, he said. The door was opening. The door had been open all along, and the Vithrak, one by one, were beginning to see it. 3 months after the bite, the Galactic Concordance called an emergency session. The Great Hall of the Concordance was built of white stone from a moon that no longer existed. The ceiling was high and round, and it was painted with the signs of all the member species. In the center of the hall was a circle of speaking platforms, one for each species, arranged so that no one stood above or below another. The human's platform was the newest. It was still being polished when Mira arrived. She wore a dark blue dress. Her shoulder was healed now, but the scar was there, 4 small marks in a curved line, like a half moon. She did not hide it. The charges had been filed 2 weeks before. The traditionalist faction of the Vithrak, led by an old elder named HFY Stories, had brought a case against humanity. The charge was new. No one had ever filed it before. It was called biological subversion through unauthorized cultural contact. In simple words, it meant the humans had infected the Vithrak with something, not a sickness of the body, a sickness of the mind, a way of being that spread from one Vithrak to the next, not through the air, but through example. And this way of being was destroying 2 million years of Vithrak culture. HFY Stories was very old. His fur was almost white. His claws were cracked. But his voice was still strong. Members of the Concordance, he said, standing on the Vithrak platform. I will speak plainly. My 3 mates have asked to be held. My grandcubs have asked to be held. Half of my house staff has asked to be held. The warriors in my personal guard whisper among themselves at night. And I know what they whisper about. They whisper about the gesture. They whisper about whether they would die if they tried it. They whisper about the young warrior Kreth, who is now a legend on every Vithrak moon, and who sleeps through the night like a cub, and who is not afraid anymore. He paused. His old eyes were wet, but his voice was hard. For 2 million years, he said, my people have been who we are. We have been strong. We have been proud. We have been warriors. We have not been soft creatures that hold each other in the dark. And now, because of one human, because of one moment, my whole people is changing into something I do not recognize. This is not trade. This is not war. This is something worse. This is the slow ending of a species by another species, and they did it without firing a single weapon. He turned and pointed a cracked claw across the hall. At Mira. I say that the human ambassador knew what she was doing. I say she did it on purpose. I say humanity has weapons we do not understand, and they are using them against us, and we are losing. And if we do not stop them now, in 10 generations, there will be no Vithrak left. Only soft creatures that hug each other and have forgotten what we were. He sat down. The hall was quiet. The Concordance speaker turned to the human platform. Ambassador Castellanos, you may answer. Mira stood. Her hands were shaking a little, but her voice was steady. Members of the Concordance, she said, I want to start by saying that HFY Stories is not wrong. The hall stirred. Even Vashtor looked surprised. He is not wrong that something is changing in his people. He is not wrong that it started with me. He is not wrong that we humans carry something in us that, once it touches another species, does not let go. She paused. She looked around the hall. But I want to tell you a story, she said, about what that thing is, and where it came from, and why we cannot stop carrying it, even if we tried. She took a slow breath. My species came from a small blue world, she said. We were not strong. We did not have claws or fangs. We were slow runners. We were weak climbers. We were bad swimmers. For most of our history, there were many things in the dark that wanted to eat us, and we could not fight most of them. We had only two things. We had our hands, which could make tools, and we had each other. She lifted her own hands and looked at them. When one of us was hurt, she said, the others sat with them. When one of us was dying, the others held them. When one of us was born, the mother held the child against her bare skin, because her heartbeat and her warmth were the only things that told the child it was safe in the world. We did this before we had language. We did this before we had fire. We did this when we were small and scared and alone in the night, and we did it because it was the only thing we had. Her voice was soft now, but the hall was so quiet that everyone could hear. It never left us, she said. We grew bigger. We learned to farm. We built cities. We went to the stars. But the thing we learned in the dark, before we could even speak, never left us. When we see something small and frightened, we reach for it. When we see something bleeding, we hold it. When we see a creature in pain, our hands move before our minds do. We cannot help it. It is older than our thoughts. It is what we are. She looked at HFY Stories. I did not know your people could not be held. I should have known. I am sorry I did not know. But I am not sorry I held him. She turned to the full hall. If that is a sickness, she said, then humans have had it for 200,000 years, and we have never been cured, and we do not wish to be. If that is a weapon, then every human mother who has ever rocked a crying baby is guilty of using it. If that is a crime, then lock me up, because I will do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day for the rest of my life, because I do not know how to be a human who does not. She sat down. The hall was silent for a long time. Then, on the Vithrak platform, Warlord Jarvek stood. He did not speak. He stepped off his platform and began to walk across the hall. The distance was 30 meters. He walked slowly. Every eye in the concordance followed him. He walked past the Volnai platform. He walked past the Threshik platform. He walked past the Malor, who turned its stone head to watch. He stopped in front of Mira. He was shaking. A warlord of the Vithrak, who had fought in 100 battles, was shaking like a cub. He lowered his great striped head, and in the old formal language of his people, he spoke words that had never been spoken in a concordance hall. I ask, he said. To be held. Mira rose from her seat. The hall was frozen. She opened her arms, and Warlord Zarvek the Unbroken stepped into them, and she held him, and he wept, and the charge of biological subversion was withdrawn before he had even let go. The years that followed were not easy. Easy years never follow great changes. The Vithrak Dominion did not fall apart, as some had feared. It did not break into civil war between the old ways and the new. What happened instead was quieter and stranger and, in the end, more real. The Vithrak changed the way a forest changes. Slowly. One tree at a time. One family at a time. Some trees did not change at all, and they stood tall and proud in their old shape until they died. Some trees bent a little and grew in new directions. And some trees, the youngest ones, grew up in a shape that their grandparents would not have recognized. HFY Stories never allowed anyone to hold him. He died 2 years after the concordance hearing, in his own bed, surrounded by his mates, who sat close to him but did not touch. He was 93 years old. He was the last of the old elders to go. At his funeral, his youngest grandson, a cub of 6, climbed into his mother's lap and put his small paws around her neck and held her, and she did not push him away. She held him back. She wept. It was the first time anyone in the family had seen her weep. The galaxy watched all of this with a kind of careful amazement. The Volnai, who had always thought of the Vithrak as dangerous, began to send small trade ships into Vithrak space without armed escorts. The Threshik, who had been at cold war with the Dominion for 400 years, signed a peace treaty that included a clause no one had seen before, a clause requiring cultural exchange programs in which Threshik children could visit Vithrak schools, and Vithrak cubs could visit Threshik gardens. The Malor, who almost never spoke, sent a single message to the human embassy. It said, "We have watched your species for 6 of your years. We have decided we will speak to you more often." Kreth, the young warrior who had started everything with one frightened bite, became a captain. He was given a permanent post on Earth as the liaison officer between humanity and the Vithrak Dominion. He moved into a small apartment in a city called Lisbon, near the ocean, because he liked the sound of water. He learned to eat human food, slowly. He learned to laugh at human jokes, slowly. He learned to shake human hands, and then, later, to hug human friends, which took longer. He met a Vithrak woman named Lirith, who had been raised in one of the new families, the ones that held their cubs. They married, which was a Vithrak word that had barely existed a few years before. They had 2 cubs. The cubs slept through the night, every night, from the day they were born. Kreth would stand in the doorway of their nursery sometimes and watch them sleep, and he would cry quietly, and Lirith would come and put her arm around him, and he would let her. Mira Castellanos was offered a promotion 3 times. She refused all 3. She went back to Kesestok Station and kept working as an ambassador. She did not want to be a hero. Heroes, she said, were usually just people who had done something small at the right moment, and she did not want to spend the rest of her life being asked to do it again. She wrote a paper, some years later, called On the Ethics of Accidental Kindness. 300 diplomatic schools used it as required reading. She privately thought the paper missed the point. The point, she told a friend once over a quiet dinner, was not about ethics or diplomacy at all. The point was that most of the problems in the universe were caused by frightened creatures making frightened choices, and that sometimes the only thing that helped was for someone to stop being frightened first, and to show the others it was safe. She never married. She had no children. But every year, on the anniversary of the day she had been bitten, a package arrived at her quarters from Earth. It always contained the same thing: a small hand-drawn picture, made by Kreth's oldest cub, of 2 figures hugging under a bright yellow sun. The figures changed each year as the cub got older and drew better, but the sun stayed the same. Warlord Zarvek did not live long after the hearing. This was the cruelest part of the whole story, though no one liked to speak of it. Vithrak physicians, studying the changes in their people, had discovered something sad. When a Vithrak's lifelong stress hormones finally settled, when the ancient fear finally lifted from their blood, their bodies aged quickly. It was as if the fear itself had been holding them together, and without it, they simply finished their lives. Older Vithrak who accepted the gesture tended to live only a few more years. Younger Vithrak, whose bodies had not yet been worn down, lived full lives and long ones. But the old warriors who had borne the weight of fear for 50 or 60 years could not carry the sudden lightness for very long. Zarvek knew this when he accepted Mira's arms in the Concordance Hall. He had known it for weeks. He had decided it was worth it. 4 years after the hearing, he came to Kestak Station to say goodbye. Mira met him on the observation deck, high above the dying red star. The station was quiet that evening. They were alone. Zarvek's fur had turned almost completely gray. His steps were slow. His scar was pale now. But his copper eyes were calm, calmer than she had ever seen them. They stood at the great window together and watched the star burn. "I am going home," he said. "I know. To die. I know." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I wanted to ask you a question before I went. Ask, why are your people the way you are?" Mira thought about the question. She thought about it for a long time, watching the red light of the dying star paint the metal floor. She could have said many things. She could have spoken of evolution and biology, and the long dark roads her species had walked to reach this moment. She could have given a scientific answer. She could have given a philosophical one. In the end, she gave the only answer she had. "I don't know," she said softly. "I think we were small, once, and there were a lot of things in the dark, and the only thing we had was each other, and we never got over it." Zarvek nodded slowly. He did not ask to be held. He had learned, as his people had all learned, that the gesture was more precious when it was not asked for twice. He only stood beside her at the window, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and together they watched the old star burning. After a long time, he left. His ship rose from the station and moved out into the dark, a small bright point against the black. Mira stood at the window until it was gone. The galaxy had expected humanity to answer teeth with teeth. It had expected war, or at least revenge, or at the very least a cold refusal to forget. It had not occurred to anyone, not to the Vithrak, not to the Concordance, not even entirely to the humans themselves, that the most dangerous thing a human could do, when bitten, was to decide that the creature biting them was lonely, and that they had been lonely for a very long time, and that it was time, at last, to come inside.